The highlight of this race is that we still had the fastest car and driver, but because we had to do a few extra pit stops, it was only good enough for us to get second in this race. What actually happened is that the weather forecast says there's no chance of rain past the 30-minute mark, but it was still raining until the 1 hour 10-minute mark, and everyone had to do an extra pit stop because they didn't have enough fuel to cover it. Our strategy only allowed us to cover enough fuel up to the 30-minute mark, same as the weather forecast suggested, and that means we unfortunately had to do this extra pit stop at the end too, but it's still good enough for second place. You can also see a lot of the top contenders, they had a very poor pace, and some of them also had to pit in the last few laps. We didn't get the quickest lap because we didn't set our driver to do any push laps. It's too difficult to find out when there would be our driver finish the fuel and have low fuel to do the boost lap, so we didn't do any. If we look at the fastest driver in the same class as us, everyone did a free pit stop. We were top 380 quickest, but we had to do those 2 extra pit stops and lose a lot of time. And we chose to do a 3 pit strategy instead of a 2 pit and use less fuel. They would have done so much better. We didn't choose that option because we wanted to anticipate the no chance of rain past the first 30-minute mark, and if we use the 3 pit stop strategy, we would have to pit twice for the dry weather at the start, and then also pit again during the rain, and that would cause a lot of time loss. But unfortunately, the weather forecast was scanned. That's why our strategy and a lot of other strategies didn't work. You can also see the fuel that we used was a little bit different, because post video I was thinking we don't want to do those 13-14 laps first, then do a short stint, because we have no idea on when the remaining laps would be. So it would likely mean that we pit and we instantly do only a few laps and then we finish the race. So we did 2 small stints first, and the last one has a very long stint, then we would do minimum of 7 laps or so, and we'll have less time loss. If we look at our lap time compared to our teammates, we are still 35 seconds quicker, even with the extra pit stops involved. We are not going to train our driver anymore because we are already so fast and we have a huge point lead in the season, and want to save money and prepare for when we promote and be a better position. We still have a very good car, and we have a 31 point lead to stay for the champion position. And I think if we lost 10 points for all these races, then we would have 0 point lead in the season. But only would happen if 2Cast or someone here is first place for every single race, so that's also unlikely because we look at 2Cast, he doesn't score first all that often. I copied the post-race data into our calculator tool, and we can see the wear was 0.5 off compared to a calculator, and our stamina drain was very low, 1.94. For mixed weather race or wet race, Normally we see 2.1 or so, but for the past dry race we see 2.7, 2.5 or so. So stamina drain has suddenly been very inconsistent, whereas the start 10 races were very consistent. And because there was a lot of weather changing, we can't really determine how well our car weight compensation is doing and if we need to change it at all. If we look at the car update, we can potentially downgrade a few parts and save money. We'll definitely need to downgrade the wing to make the weight a bit lower and in a comfortable zone. If we look at downgrading our brakes, we will still have relatively high wear, but we don't want to go down to level 1 because that's going to cost us some performance. And that means we can reduce our driver risk a bit in the race and reduce our car wear. Normally 37 or 36 is the exact clear track risk we're going to experience, and when we go to 37, there's 1 point extra wear in our front wing. When I look at the CTR to reduce the wear by 1 extra point, it's about 31 to 26. The average is 28 and is the same as some of the previous risks we were using. The rear wing we wouldn't be able to downgrade because this track is somewhat handling based and we need the extra performance to guarantee a good finish and potentially a fastest lap, and it will pay off itself. We can see that we gained a bit of car performance points after the update, and our car is balanced now because we upgraded the gearbox and then improved our acceleration. I copied the car weight into our calculator tool. If we look at the past race data for this track that we're doing, we can see either 1 to 3 pit stop would work, and we can see that our calculator tool shows a 1.37 coefficient, which is suggesting a 2 pit stop, but we always know that you can do 1 or more or less than the suggested amount and you won't lose time. So because there's potentially some weather changes, choosing this 3 pit stop strategy will allow us to have a good amount to cover the distance and not lose time in the weather changing situations. But potentially it's going to rain a long time and it's probably not going to be ever dry until very few laps at the end. We may need to stay with a 2 pit stop. If we look at the calculator tool, we can use the soft to do a 3 pit stop. We also entered the fuel required. If we give our car 23 and 22 fuel for wet laps, we can have 2 extra laps in the total. And when we do have 23 laps of fuel, our car would do about 19 laps, and there may not be much tires left, but since it's not likely to become dry and actual weight might be a bit lower, it doesn't really matter, and it might only rain during the last stint, so you can have this fuel that does a 2 pit stop in rain, but it changes dry. It will be equal to doing a 3 pit stop with this amount of fuel, and it's quite a basic strategy. And we figure out the fuel needs to be these values, and we're going to do a boost lap in this one near the end to guarantee a best lap and gain the extra revenue of 1 million. We're gonna find the setup for the race. We're going to add the wet compensation value for the wear and temperature because it's a wet race. We found the final setup and we're going to find the wing split. The 70 wing split and had the best time, and we did minus 140 more to make a negative 70, and the time was similar to adding 70, which is this 444. So we're going to do 70 wing split plus 10, which is 80. I'm going to do qualifying. Entered the setup, we entered the fuel, I entered the fuel required, and I reduced the clear risk by 5 points to reduce our car parts wear because it's a bit high, and then we set the boost laps after the first pit stop. We also entered the setup for the race. I forgot to use the other calculation results for Q2 because it's wet, and I added this here so it's clear to see. So next time I would go down and use this wet because the wet and dry temp comps are different. If we look at our qualifying time, it's quite good. But we didn't get pole position and we're 0.7 seconds off. I don't think the correct temp comp would be able to get us to pole. Surprisingly, even with doing a few rounds of echo to save money and not training our driver anymore and downgrading parts always when possible, we qualified top 37 out of 900 qualified. We are also 1.6 seconds or so slower than top 5. And we look at our season standings because all of our rivals, the top contenders, keep making mistakes for past few races. After round 8 or so, everyone keeps making mistakes, so there was no pressure for us. And we have a huge point gap lead, and we're basically going to win this season and get that trophy.